I'm Jeff Hunt. He's Bill Thorpe. It's Wednesday.
Is it a day to protest?
This is a hot video I posted the other day. I found it on Reddit. It comes from Campus Middle School here in the Cherry Creek School District. And a lot of students, hundreds of students, out participating in an ICE walkout. So protesting ICE and federal law enforcement. They're out there with their signs, and these kids are yelling and screaming as people are driving by, honking. Is this the proper use of school time? This is our tax dollars at work here. And you have kids not spending time in the classroom, but instead out there protesting lawful federal law enforcement operations. Is this a form of indoctrination taking place, or a good, civic responsibility action? I mean, look, kids have walked out, and maybe they're just looking for time to not be in the classroom. Hey, look, a bunch of people are not having to spend time in the classroom. I'm going to go join them. So which way do you see it? This has sparked a ton of debate on X and Facebook with these videos, but we're not the only ones. Daily Caller with an article. Schools teaching kids to hate ICE before teaching them to spell ICE. That's a good headline, by the way. Coming up here in just a second, we're going to talk with Melanie Kurdys about all this. She's with U.S. parents involved in education. So this will be some fun and interesting debate you're not going to want to miss, happening in government-run schools all across our communities. Now it's time, though, for the news.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hey, good morning. It is Wednesday, 26 and partly cloudy in Denver, 25 in the Springs. Expecting highs in the upper 50s today. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. The FAA says all flights to and from El Paso, Texas, are being halted for 10 days for, quote, special security reasons, end of quote. Today's announcement said no pilots may operate an aircraft in the areas covered by the federal notice, but did not elaborate on the, quote, special security reasons. Benjamin Netanyahu in D.C. again today to meet with DJT. All right, we'll see if that has anything to do with that. A man who was questioned last night in connection with the Nancy Guthrie investigation said he had no idea what was going on until detectives told him he was being detained in a kidnapping case. Carlos Palazuelos was released early today and was asked by reporters what he'll do next.
I'll try to clear my name. I didn't do anything.
Yeah, he's going to try to clear his name. He's definitely not going to Disney World. He said he doesn't watch the news and had no idea what was going on. Colorado election officials are approaching an upcoming FBI meeting about the 26 midterms with caution. Secretary of State Jenna Griswold says the state is skeptical.
We will engage with them from a very hesitant point of view. We have already switched how we operate with the federal government. We're no longer going to be allowing them into our systems.
I'm hesitant of all of you, including you, Grizzy. The call scheduled for February 25th will include the FBI, DOJ, DHS, and the Postal Inspection Service and the Election Assistance Commission. Half of Americans think 47 is covering up the crimes of the late sex criminal Jeffrey Epstein. then they should ask themselves the same thing about the Biden administration, because they didn't say anything for 4 years, and almost as many think he was personally involved. Well, it's been reported many times that he helped authorities with information on Epstein. Could be more. Who knows? A new economist YouGov poll about the Epstein file says 85% of Americans think that there are powerful elites who helped Epstein abuse young girls and that they need to be investigated. Agree with that. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick testified before the Senate Appropriations Committee about his relationship with Epstein after he did lead people to believe that he cut off any contact with him in 2005. Problem is, he took his family to the island in 2012.
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it.
Wow. The DJT administration is planning to cut about $600 million in public health grants to 4 Democratic-led states, including Colorado. HHS says the funding is inconsistent with agency's priorities. These grants, administered through the CDC, help states hire staff, manage outbreaks, and update data systems. A grand jury has declined to indict Colorado's Jason Crow and a coalition of Democratic lawmakers over the illegal orders video last year.
U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine Pirro, pursued the indictment after the lawmakers urged military service members to defy illegal orders in a joint video statement. The video was in response to the Trump administration carrying out deadly boat strikes in the Caribbean. The lawmakers included Senators Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin. I'm Mark Mayfield.
All right, the U.S. earned 5 medals Tuesday for its most successful day so far at the Winter Olympics. A victory parade and street party will take place in Seattle today to celebrate the Seahawks Super Bowl victory. And the Grizzlies at the Nuggets tonight at 7 o'clock as they tip it off in Lodo. 24 in the Springs, 25 in Denver. More of the Jeff and Bill Show ahead on News Talk 710 KNUS in Denver, and now on AM 1460 and FM 101.1 The Answer in Colorado Springs, all along the Front Range. This is the Jeff and Bill Show. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
As Pacific moisture gets deeper and increases across Colorado, good news for skiers in the snowpack. Over the course of the days ahead, we're going to finally see snow returning to Colorado's mountains, especially along and just west of the Continental Divide. For Front Range areas from Denver to Colorado Springs, there's not going to be a lot of weather in this pattern change, but a little bit. Expect a lot of clouds today. Temperatures mainly in the 50s with 30s tonight, staying in the 50s for Thursday, and a little cooler, low to mid-50s Friday. Still well above average for February. But for tomorrow night and Friday, there will be a few rain and snow showers along the Front Range. Snow shower activity closer you get to the foothills. Then there's a bit of a break in the weather with 50s and lower 60s for the weekend through President's Day Monday. Trending cooler, bit more active by the middle to the end of next week. Meteorologist Don Day in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
News Talk 710, KNUS in Denver.
And now on AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs.
All along the Front Range, this is the Jeff and Bill Show where you hear both sides. Let's talk briefly just about Guy Rees. We've had a wonderful experience with Guy Rees every single day. I thank the Lord for Guy Rees because we used to rely on really cheap blinds that we ordered online. They'd break and they'd be like halfway up on one side, and I get so tired of them, and they were heavy. And then my wife and I decided to go to Guy Rees in Parker. They're all over the Denver metro area, and we got to sit down with a professional designer who showed us an incredible, guys, I mean incredible selection of Hunter Douglas custom blinds, shades, and shutters. I mean, every possible color, type, anything you could get with these blinds, shades, and shutters. Ours are on remote control. We have a little button on the side right above our light switch, and it just goes up and down. It's so easy. And it was very affordable. I was a little overwhelmed at first because I didn't want to pay for a professional designer. I was afraid of the cost. It wasn't outrageous at all. And she walked us through everything, helped us find the perfect options to enhance the look and functionality of our home. Billy, I don't know if your wife's like this. Somebody in the relationship's typically the questioner. And my wife, who's an attorney, asks questions of everything.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Right? And just dives in. And she wants to understand how this whole thing's going to work and all the different possibilities. And this design pro was able to walk us through everything. So whether your curtains are clashing or you just want a fresh look, Guy Rees has the solutions for you. Their designers are the experts, and they can help you with everything from window treatments to full room decor.
Yeah, this is the cool thing when you go to Guy Rees is rather than just sitting there and you're not going to some of those big box stores and you're talking to them about possible choices in drapes, like you're looking at things like possible color choices. You're dealing with someone that might work in paint or windows that day, and they may be assigned to lumber the next day. Day after that, they might be in gardening. But at Guy Rees, they provide a professional consultant that is there on staff to help you and your family make the best choices possible. It's okay if you're not an interior decorator, but Guy Rees has got one that is going to make sure that your interior looks fantastic.
That's right.
Next time your friends and family come over, they're going to go, wow, what'd you do to the place? And you're like, oh, I am a pro. It's exactly it. You got a lot of bragging, and you don't have to tell them your secret. Check out Guy Rees.
Get the same advice right in your own home that we got ours. Visit GuyRees.com to schedule your in-home consultation. GUIRYS.com, GUIRYS.com. Go see the great people at Guy Rees. You'll be sure to thank me. All right, so I posted this video. I saw it on Reddit. It was kids at Campus Middle School, just down the street from the studio, by the way. And I went to West Middle School, so rival. But this is typically a feeder into the Cherry Creek School District. And hundreds of kids outside protesting ICE. And this has been happening all over the country. Kids heading out, taking time away from school to go protest ICE. ICE out. We hate ICE. They write on their signs. And the question I have is, okay, I might permit this if y'all were doing great in school and everyone's reading at level and math scores off the charts. Look at us. Yeah, we're going to go out there and a little civics lesson. But I keep saying this, that our schools are not made for education these days. They're made for indoctrination. They want to turn the kids into little Democrats, little activists. And so the opportunity to protest, oh, heck yeah, let's get out there. This is great. This is great training for what you're going to be doing for the rest of your lives, you little socialist activists. Or is this an active civic education, protesting injustice in our streets? Well, joining us to provide some comment on this is Melanie Kurdys, U.S. Parents Involved in Education. She's the president of the Michigan chapter. Melanie, thank you for taking time to join the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. Thank you for having me.
Well, what do you think of these ICE protests? Are these moments of civic engagement, a training for the kids to learn how to participate in their government? We're a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So, yeah, participate. Or is this just another form of leftist indoctrination? What do you think, Melanie?
Well, your opening was very spot on. I mean, we had a sign posted on the internet from a protest in Michigan where the kids wrote, ICE should be in our drink, not in our streets, and that they didn't spell it our, O-U-R, they spelled it A-R-E. So they're using the wrong word, and they don't even know. They can't read, they can't do math, and the worst part is they can't think. I actually did a search trying to find some protest in support of ICE or in support of the victims of the illegal immigrants, and I couldn't find anything. So how is it that every single school that is participating in these protests has the same political position? It's exactly to your point. It's indoctrination. It's not education. I don't know. People probably forget about Common Core standards that came in the 2012 time frame. One of the big problems with it is that the standards aren't very good for teaching kids reading and math. But the Common Core social studies standards have 4 pillars, and one of them is exactly civic engagement. And so they are getting what they are teaching. That is these protests. The problem is they're teaching it with a particular mindset, a particular opinion. And that is a problem. That is a serious problem.
That's Melanie Kurdys. Melanie, I'm a kind of Thomas Sowell free market incentives economy type of guy, which means I believe that things don't necessarily fail. They respond to incentives, and they produce ultimately what those incentives seek to produce. So I look at the graduate of a government-run school right now, and I go, okay, what do they look like? What is the end of the product that was created through government-run education? I look at them and I go, well, they more often than not are below standards with regards to reading and mathematics. Okay, so they're not hitting that benchmark. Okay, so they're weak there. But what are they really strong on? Well, they're overwhelmingly progressive. They believe deeply that the government can solve problems and that it's good to, for instance, tax the rich in order to build that government program. They believe Donald Trump is a Nazi and Republicans are Nazis. They are becoming increasingly anti-Semitic. There's plenty of studies out there that show that younger generations are more anti-Semitic. And then they are activists. They believe in the kind of socialist worldview, power to the people, take to the streets type of stuff. And so I go, okay, well, that's the product. So let's go look at the incentives that create that product. I look at the teachers. I look at the curriculum. I look at the unions. I look at the faculty. And across all of those, in the administration, I look across all those and I go, well, they're all generally very progressive in their worldview. I think schools are creating exactly what they seek to intend to create right now, which is not a well-educated student that's prepared to go into the world to contribute to it, but rather a core Democrat voter that then benefits the Democrat Party, that puts Democrats back into power, that then funds the schools. I think the entire thing is a system set up to benefit the Democrat Party. Where am I wrong in that, Melanie?
Oh, well, you're not wrong. And we shouldn't be surprised. Both Karl Marx and Hitler knew that if you start with kids young and teach them the way you want them to think, the way you want them to behave, you've got a person for life. And it only takes a few years. And that's why at our organization, U.S. Parents Involved in Education, we just published a new report, Are Government Schools Redeemable? And our conclusion is no, not without years and significant effort, because of all the entities that you just listed. They are all designed to accomplish the same outcome, which is not well-educated children who are able to think critically and participate in our society well. And that is problematic. And so we encourage parents to get their kids out of those schools and homeschool or send them to a good private school where that indoctrination won't happen. You can't spend your evenings and weekends undoing this intense indoctrination that happens in the public schools, and that the things that parents have been outraged about, for example, teaching little boys they can become girls and girls become boys, it is losing a little bit of steam, but that's just one little piece for them. This whole anti-ICE, I mean, it's just shows in the evidence there are no students protesting in support of ICE. So where is the critical thinking? They are definitely intentionally creating a generation, and this is actually probably the second generation of indoctrinated people who, if you look at the younger generation, especially younger women today, they're overwhelmingly liberal, overwhelmingly progressive, and they go into the school board meetings and argue with older parents or conservative parents about pornography in the libraries, and they actually talk like, okay, this is okay. And those of us who are looking at them like, what planet are you from where pornography in our schools is okay? But the teachers will argue in favor of it. The administrators will argue in favor of it. And so you realize this is not something your child can understand. They can't fix it. You can't fix it. So you have to protect your children and get them out.
That voice is Melanie Kurdys, U.S. Parents Involved in Education. She's the Michigan chapter president. Help me understand a little bit. Are we mad about the kids leaving the class to protest, or is it the assumption that the school is sponsoring? I mean, should you not be taking kids out of class to go to any sort of a demonstration, protest, or anything else? Should they always be in the class? What is it that we're mad about? Is the kids leaving the class at the perhaps behest of the school, or is it more the idea of indoctrination?
Well, that's the way they are indoctrinating. I mean, if this was, the students really organizing it and they were doing it after school or outside of school, then, it would be a little bit harder to argue with. It would still be bothersome that they're all taking the same position on an issue that's obviously debatable. It's okay to look at your law enforcement and make sure they're operating correctly, but it's also okay to say that people should be in our country illegal, especially if they are otherwise criminals as well. And so I'm personally angry that, yes, the schools are organizing this. We have a sign-up sheet, walkout sign-up sheet and information that was published by school administrators to the students, and it gives them permission to miss the last hour of school to go participate in this activity. It's not encouraging them to do it on their own time, so it is misuse of the school time. And especially as you guys made the first point at the beginning of this conversation, they're not doing the job they're supposed to do, and that is teaching kids to read, write, and do math. And chronic absenteeism on the part of students and teachers is already a problem. And so now you're encouraging absenteeism for a political agenda. And so I think it's all the wrong messaging to the children in terms of what's important about school and what they should be doing.
In the example you gave about the school and the permission form, was it an excused absence, or was it just a list of who was going to not be there that day? Do you know?
It's a school walkout, a sign-up sheet, and it tells them where to go, how to sign up.
Yeah, but my question is it an excused absence? Because the information I have from Colorado, and that would be different from Colorado, information I have from Colorado school districts is the kids that walk out did not get an excused absence. It was unexcused. So they would have to face the consequences therein. It could just be different. The fact is different states and different schools can approach it differently. But inside of Cherry Creek school districts, it was an unexcused absence on that one. So the kids would have to then either do detention, make up work, or get zeros for things that they missed as well. Now, if we're just mad at them walking out, there have been organized protests by private and charter schools at times where they come down to the state legislature or go to other places in the country and go to marches and other things. Those were organized by the adults at the school and were a form of a protest or a demonstration. Are we upset at that? And that's why I asked the question about, are we mad the kids walked out of school, or are we mad about what they were walking out about? Because I see people organizing protests and demonstrations on both sides?
Well, I mean, I tried to find some pro-ICE. I don't know, maybe you
I'm not talking pro-ICE. I'm just talking in general. Recently in Wichita, Kansas, a whole bunch of kids from private schools went down to the state legislature on a specific day to talk about tax breaks
like the
for
March
funding.
for Life would be an example. Pretty much every Catholic high school in the state goes to the March for Life. But I do think there's difference. But I'll allow Melanie Kurdys to speak into that first.
Clearly, students should learn how our government operates. And a planned trip to your capital has always been part of normal school lessons, learning. It's a field trip. It's, teaching kids how to be civically engaged is appropriate. And I'm not even saying that all protests are inappropriate. I think what's the most disturbing is the clear, okay, so you guys just made the point. A pro-life demonstration will come out of a religious school, but you don't see a pro-life demonstration coming out of a government school. And so what we're doing is our education system is exacerbating the problem we have in society today, and that's division. We're teaching children to be divided and not teaching children to think critically and have open debates with different positions, different opinions, and trying to engage in civil discourse that actually seeks understanding, clarity, better policy, which I would say a good trip to your capital would be exactly the purpose of that, is to show how these debates happen in a civil manner to create better policy.
I appreciate that, Melanie, but in the example that I gave, they were going there specifically for an issue, not for a get to know you, this is how the sausage is made. They had picked an issue, and the schools pulled kids out of there, and they went down for specifically that issue. That's all I'm pointing out, is that it seems like at times we're okay with schools sponsoring or pulling kids out for a certain thing, but we're not okay with others based on whether or not we agree with the politics. That's it.
But I mean, you do have a pretty big difference. One is that parents know the value, for instance, of the Catholic high school. They are paying for it out of their own pockets. They're invested in it. Whereas with these are government-run, taxpayer-funded schools that are not exploring both sides of an issue. They're simply driving a single issue in one direction. And to Melanie's point, a perfect example of the fact they're not willing to explore the complexities of this issue is you have no students going, you know what, I stand with ICE. I'm going to organize this protest, or we're going to have a debate, or we're going to have a discussion. All I see is one side from what should be, according to everybody else. We're not going to put 10 commandments up on the walls because we have to remain neutral. But Melanie, I'll give you the example.
I appreciate that.
The response.
I appreciate that. And I'll get to Melanie in a second. I appreciate that. But we don't see those other side protests coming out of the private institutions either. So if we're looking for protests from both sides coming out of any institution, we just simply don't see it. And the reason
it's not any institution.
And the reason I brought it up,
funded.
and the reason I brought it up based on the politics and based on the schools was the fact that in one, the schools actively organized and brought them down there. And that was the argument against the public schools, was that these teachers somehow are organizing and promoting these kids and getting them to do this as an activity. And there are other groups of schools that are absolutely doing that. So for me, it's just we're mad about the politics. We're not really mad about the function of what's happening, because if they were doing with what we agreed with, we'd be fine with it. It's more about we're mad about the politics contained therein.
I think there's an important difference in the intent of the adults, that I don't believe children should be used as political pawns on any side of an issue. I think that if that's the point you're getting to, that somehow we justify using children as political pawns on the conservative side, and that's okay because it's our issues, I think that's wrong as well. And so I would not endorse, having children like on a particular issue, because that's what you're doing. You're using children as pawns because most often they don't understand the complexities of issues, and that that's why, to me, if you're using the lesson as an individual occurrence to go learn about how these things happen, that's different than, corralling a bunch of kids who all agree with your political position, and so you're going to get them to go protest with you. I wouldn't agree with that on either side.
I like that, Melody, and I appreciate that, and I would agree with you on like 99% of what you said. Now, I'm going to take this in a little bit of a different direction, and this isn't about whether or not the kids were doing something that was good or not good. It's not about the politics, and it's even not about the teachers maybe prompting the kids and telling them and trying to indoctrinate them. What I want to ask is, in the public school setting, when you have large groups of students that are walking out, what is the school supposed to do? How do you stop it? And the reason I ask that is because I have been screaming for years now that we have a serious discipline problem in our public schools. We do not hold kids accountable for skipping class, for not passing their assignments, for not being able to read or achieve at grade level, and even getting into fights and bullying inside of schools. We have a serious disciplinary school problem inside of our public institutions. And what I can't figure out is, if we didn't want these kids to walk out in a mass protest on whatever it is, doesn't matter the issue, how do we stop it?
Well, it's a really good point. I don't know if you ever participated in walkouts in your experience, but we had a walkout for our dress code in our high school.
Yeah, did one of those too.
So I think as adults, you have to gauge the situation. You don't want to escalate. And when you have a mass movement of any group of people, children, I think escalating at the time is inappropriate. I think the school you referenced, warning them that, okay, fine, but you will suffer detention, you will get zeros for your work, that suffering appropriate consequences is right. But you're right about the general discipline problem. This is a silly one, but in Michigan, we just passed a law that cell phones are illegal for children in school. And it's like, seriously, you need a law by the legislators to institute a classroom discipline issue that the teacher couldn't manage, the administration couldn't manage, the school board couldn't manage, the parents couldn't manage. So now we have a law, and then, really? You're going to call the police and say, arrest that kid, he's got a cell phone. No, this is absurd. What you're demonstrating to the kids is exactly that you have lost the authority of leadership of your adults in your facilities when you throw up your hands and say, I can't fix it, somebody else has to fix it. And that, you're right, that's a serious problem. And I think this is a great learning opportunity for administrators on, looking at the schools that are doing a better job of, helping kids understand the issues. Again, another one would be, how about if we all go into the auditorium the next day and talk about the pros and cons of the issue, the pros and cons of demonstrating, what are other ways that you can accomplish your political objectives? Turn it into a learning opportunity and not just throw up your hands and say the kids are going to do what the kids are going to do.
Melanie, I like that a lot, and I think that's where I believe that our local and national teachers in the public school system fell down during that national ICE protest, is because, for me, it's an opportunity to turn to the kids a couple of days beforehand and say, hey, we are taking that day's lesson plan and we are setting it aside, and we are going to be discussing this. It's obviously important to some of you, and inside of the classroom, we are going to discuss this. And now you keep the kids engaged, and you have them examine it from both sides, but also not engage in that type of political protest. I think it's a better idea.
I appreciate you being reasonable in that, but they're not doing that. That's the problem. You got to look at the product that they're producing. They're thrilled with what they're getting right now, and you don't see the effort to try to change that. Melanie, we've got to run here, but I do real quick want you to explain U.S. Parents Involved in Education, because I love this website, uspie.org. Tell folks briefly about uspie.org, U.S. Parents Involved in Education.
Our mission is to get the federal government completely out of education and return control of education to parents and the local communities. That's really the way you can best educate every child and carry on your community's wishes. Yes, will we have some communities that end up being liberal and progressive? Sure enough. But we will also have communities that end up more conservative and mixed. And the point is, the best way for children to learn is when their parents have the primary oversight and the local community is involved. And you can read about us at uspie.org. And we have a podcast with Sherry Few, and that if you want to follow, you can click on that through the website.
That's Melanie Kurdys, U.S. Parents Involved in Education, the Michigan chapter president, talking about the Ice Out protests taking place in schools across the country. We appreciate your time this morning, Melanie.
Thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Jeff and Bill. Have a good day.
All right. Would love to hear from you at this point. Would you support these schools having Ice Out protests? Do you have a more nuanced approach to it? Going, look, these kids are going to do this anyways. We're going to hold them accountable by giving them detention or zeros, that type of thing. Do you think schools are promoting this? Maybe not openly, but they're allowing it to happen and they're proud of those kids going out there and doing this. Or do you think there needs to be changes to our schools? And you want to see government-run education, which has simply become an indoctrination factory, minimized. Give us a call at 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law Text line at 720-819-5115. We want you to be a part of the conversation. And the text messages are very hot on these. Faith, the history teacher, saying people are making a lot of assumptions about these walkouts when they happen. Ask questions instead of pretending to be an expert. Campus is a high-performing school. Listen to the decision from the Supreme Court, Tinker v. Des Moines. And interesting. Okay. Lots more text messages. I'll get into these next, but we want you to join the conversation. In the meantime, let's talk the gun room. Folks, there are some businesses in Colorado that aren't just stores, they're institutions. The gun room in Lakewood is one of them. They've been serving Denver since 1982, and when you step inside, you immediately know this isn't a big box operation. It's real. They have wood counters, knowledgeable people, a shop built on experience, responsibility, and respect for the Second Amendment. I love everything about this store. The gun room buys, sells, and consigns everything from antique firearms to modern tactical and hunting rifles. They even help families navigate gun collections after losing a loved one, something that requires trust and integrity. Wayne, the owner, is the owner, and I promise he will take great care of you. With over 1,000 firearms in stock and inventory changing every day, this is the place to shop, especially with new restrictive laws coming down the road. Support a local, family-owned Colorado business. Support freedom. Visit denvergunroom.com or call 303-237-1300. That's 303-237-1300. denvergunroom.com. denvergunroom.com. We will continue. More to come. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710, KNUS in Denver.
And on AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs. This is where you hear both sides. We are The Jeff and Bill Show.
News Talk 710, KNUS in Denver.
And on AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs.
All along the Front Range, this is the Jeff and Bill show where you get both sides of an issue, and that is exactly what's happening right now.
I know.
So we're discussing the ICE walkouts that took place in public schools across the country, and I have a video if you want to see the one that happened at Campus Middle School at x.com/Jeff on. Hundreds of kids outside with signs, people driving by, honking, people cheering, all that stuff. Is this the role of schools? Now, people responding saying, look, this isn't something we organized. The kids did this. What are we supposed to do? 9233 saying, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. This is Michael, the biology teacher. Did you really think the teachers were leading this? Jeff, when was the last time you were in a classroom? Where are we supposed to tackle them? And 2789 responding, when I was in school in the late 60s, if ICE was going to have a school-wide walkout, administrators would have let the word out that there would be teachers standing at the door handing out suspensions. Parents were going to be notified. Give the kids consequences. What I'm more interested in is I'm looking at the result of the product of the system we have created. This is a government-run, taxpayer-funded system. And the product that's being turned out here, by most metrics, can't perform mathematically, can't perform in reading, yet they come out in high percentages, like 80, 90% Democrat voters. They're participating in ICE out protests. The system, in my mind, is compromised. The system is doing what the incentives are telling it to do, which is produce Democrat voters at this point, not people that are well equipped to produce, to engage in society. They can't meet mathematical and reading numbers, and parents that are engaged are pulling their kids out of it. They're looking for charter school options. They're willing to go get a second, third job. Grandparents are willing to go back to work to fund a private education because they don't believe that what government-run schools are producing is good, either for the student themselves or for society. And the ICE out protest just becomes another, see, I told you so. See, this is what they're producing. Am I wrong, Bill?
Well, see, what I'm hearing in that is that because the majority of this group doesn't agree with me, they have to be wrong. And that the school system is doing something wrong because these people don't come to the same conclusions that I have. And I kind of disagree on looking at it that way. Somewhere around 65% of high school seniors when they come out of school identify as Democrats. It's hardly the 80 or 90% as we are somewhat led to believe based on language that is being used, not by you, but by other people in this space.
Well, I just said that.
Yeah, but still, I'm trying to give you some space there that it's not as overwhelming as people say it is, that it's about 60%. And if you would go and talk about a time in which you were more ideological and had more of a purity idea about why can't we all just get along kind of an idea, that normally is when you're a little bit younger. There's always that idea that people become conservative as they age. So seeing more kids identify as Democrats or seeing to have more beliefs that are liberal would track most of history in this country. That's kind of how things have gone for years. Now, there's a sociological reason as to why you become more conservative in your age.
It's called reality hits you.
Well, no, it's because of how society progresses. That psychologically and sociologically, we as individuals get to a certain point, and that's where we plant our flag. The idea being, the easiest example is the music you listen to and the clothes and haircut you have. There's a point in which that stopped, and you stopped also looking at much of the progression of society. So as some of society begins to move forward, you find yourself back on the conservative side of things. And I'm just not talking about now. I'm talking about if you pick it up and you look at things through civil rights, you go to the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. That's just how it happens over the course of time. So people naturally and do become more conservative as they age. So I don't think it's necessarily an indictment of what the schools are doing per se.
The perfect response into how these systems are set up to advance a progressive ideology and agenda is going to come in the next hour when a publicly funded state university, Adams State University, won't even allow a Turning Point chapter to formalize. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Marie in Denver. Good morning, Marie. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. I'm 84, and I am always appalled at how you all begin talking, and there's so much of the recent history that I've lived through that you all don't even talk about. Now, when communities were in charge of schools, there were two things. One was the schools were segregated, and the big demonstrations and fights and brutality in the 50s and the 60s and even into the 70s was desegregating the schools. And black kids had a terrible time even getting into schools that they were constitutionally entitled to. So that's the first thing. The support was from liberal people, and so that's one thing. The other thing that you don't really seem to understand is until 1975, children with handicaps, physical, mental, or both, were denied a public education. So you had kids who for whatever reason that schools could exclude them, and parents did not want those children in the schools. And the Democrats, again, passed a law that was found to be constitutional, saying that those children were entitled to a school, to a public education. So when you talk about how you have to divide, when you look at a school population today and what the scores are, you have to look at exactly which population are you talking about. And one of the things that happened when children with disabilities came into the school system was it was very, very expensive sometimes to take care of kids with physical disabilities. And that money did not result in higher scores. It resulted in an equitable education. And you both live in suburbs that gained a whole lot from something called white flight, because in the early 80s, no, it was before that, the late 70s, the courts decided that Denver public schools was segregating administratively and keeping black kids out of schools in white neighborhoods, and said they couldn't do that anymore.
Marie, I appreciate the history and the walk down this, and in many ways you're right about it, but I want to ask you this. Why are 80% of kids in Denver public schools failing to meet their math requirements?
I don't know. How many of them, first of all, are English learners? What are the English learners doing? Can you tell me that?
Well, there's a lot of them, and they're costing the state a lot of money.
I know. And they have a legal right to be in those schools. The next thing is how many...
that's correct. There's a constitutional requirement in Colorado that we have to provide education for them. Is that a good thing?
Yes.
That illegals come to this country and get free education?
Yes.
Okay. To me, that seems like a violation of the law to begin with, and we're having to use our tax dollars to do so, and they're not meeting our requirements.
Again, Jeff, you act as if everybody sprung up from the Mississippi mud 200 years ago and we were all white, and that's nonsense.
I don't think that's the case. I just expect people to follow the law.
Well, you don't know how your ancestors got here. We didn't. They came.
They didn't cross a border illegally.
Well, they came in boats when there wasn't anybody stopping them in New York Harbor, and maybe they were stowaways.
That's not true. That's not true. No, they went through all the requirements and came here the right way. All right, Marie, we've got to get to a break. I appreciate the call. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS in Denver.
And AM 1460 and FM 101.1, The Answer in Colorado Springs. This is where you hear both sides. We are the Jeff and Bill Show.
The debate is hot. The debate is hot on the text messages, too. Feel free to jump in. 720-819-5115 is the text message line. The phone number, 303-696-1971. When we come back in the 8 o'clock hour, we're going to talk with kids in the Turning Point chapter down in Adams State University. Not even allowed to organize. Can't even host an official meeting down there. But kids here in Denver are walking out with ICE protests.